Hey, what's up, guys? We are here. We're live in the FloGrappling studio for a not quite a one-on-one, a four-on-one interview with the one and only Travis Stevens, USA Judo representative back in the day, making it through to 3 Olympic Games, taking a silver medal there at the 2016 Olympics. Travis, it's a pleasure to have you here in the studio. Thanks for coming in.
It's a nice studio.
Thank you. And we were lucky to get you here, right?
Yeah.
Like the scheduling could have just about managed to work out?
One weekend between now and like mid-May, and it just happened to be able to work in the calendar.
Perfect. Man, so things haven't really slowed down for you at all since your 2016, kind of like you stepped away from the competition life, but things are just hectic as ever.
Yeah, even more hectic now because now I don't have an excuse that I have to buckle down and shut everything down to prepare for certain events.
So tell us, what have you been up to then? Because I know the last 2 years have been a crazy whirlwind of so many different projects and stuff, but what are you working on mostly right now?
Right now, I'm actually working on a new line of products for Fuji Sports. We're going to release a whole new line at the World Championships for Jiu-Jitsu. New gis, new clothing, new wear to kind of raise the level of brand to kind of touch like the competitor feel, like what competitors really need and what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think you probably have an idea or two about that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of training, there's a lot of grappling going on there too.
Yep, a lot of training still. You know, I don't compete, so how I train is different. I get to actually enjoy the sport. You know, I get to develop new techniques, especially in judo, that I would have abolished or like outlawed in my training before.
That's interesting. So nowadays then your time is kind of split. It still sounds like you're working 25 hours a day.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how's your kind of like your schedule split up now? Because you're traveling around, you're doing training camps, you're doing a bit of this, a bit of that.
I'm gone every Friday to Sunday, either coaching as a Project 2024 coach for judo, which is a regional training camp for grassroots style judo. We kind of bring Olympic level coaching and training to those kids. That way, when they get of age or saying, you know what, I'm going to make an Olympic team, they don't have that culture shock of moving to a location going, whoa, didn't see that coming. It kind of helps remove that big fish, small pond mentality. And that's really our goal, is to just kind of give people the, how do you compete at an Olympic level, not how do you win at Olympic level?
And I think people, maybe from the grappling world, they're not really too aware of how the Olympic system works, because you're already thinking, it's not ahead for the next Olympic Games, you're thinking beyond that, 6 years out. So the last Olympics was 2016, the next one's 2020, but you're thinking 6 years from now, the work is already well underway in getting guys ready for those games.
Believe it or not, it's actually an 8-year process.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what age are you kind of starting with these guys then?
We start young, right around like 16, 17, 15 years old, as low as like 12 to 10 years old.
So this is like the talent development and the sort of the recruitment and the identification of this, you know, the pool that you've got, and then working with those kids and try and take them up to that Olympic level. This is a big process, right?
Yeah, it's more of an educational process. Like, right now what happens is we get a lot of athletes that want it. Like, everybody wants to be an Olympic champion, but who like wants it, like really wants it. And kids are able to really sit down now and ask themselves, like, do I just want to be good at judo, or do I really want to be the best? And now they're starting to understand the differences of what they're doing at their home clubs versus the differences of training at that higher level. And when I say, hey, I'm going to bring it to you once a week for 3 weekends in a row, because that's what I do. I actually get on a train from Boston. I go to New Jersey. I coach on Saturday. I get on a plane. I go to Seattle. I coach on a Sunday. I come back home and I coach Monday throughout the week, and I repeat that process.
So you do coast to coast every weekend?
Coast to coast, just to prove a point that it can be done and it should be done.
Because you've got strong opinions on this, that the general state of affairs with talent development in the USA, you feel is just light years behind other nations that you're having to compete with on that international stage. But before we go into that, I'd like to know a little bit about your background, because you're not from the Northeast, you're from the other side, you're from Washington State, right?
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about your personal journey, your introduction to judo, which I assume was at probably a pretty young age.
Yep.
But then the process that you went through, kind of like that talent development system that you went through to get to where you got.
So I started judo 2 weeks before my 7th birthday, and I got very good very quickly because I was a young, aggressive kid, and when you're a kid, you're not good because you have good coaching per se. They teach you the right things, but you're good because you're aggressive, you fight, you like competing. It's like instinctual, yeah.
Right.
That's why you're good. And then coaches tend to gravitate towards that, which makes you better as a teenager.
So they develop maybe the athletic capabilities much later.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I was 11, we were getting ready for junior nationals, and I suffered a horrific knee injury, which a lot of people know.
At 11 years of age?
At 11 years of age.
Wow.
A guy shot a double leg, and his shoulder went right through my kneecap, and he grabbed onto my ankle and did a forward roll, and my big toe came up to my hip.
Wow.
God.
And I had torn all the ligaments, not completely, but all partially, because I was young. I had that dexterity and that flexibility. And the one thing that I'm lucky enough, well, I consider it lucky versus other people, is my joints are a little bit more nimble than most. So I don't break things, I tend to tear things. So like my rotator cuffs tend to tear, but my shoulder doesn't dislocate. So I just have that natural elasticity in my muscles. And as a kid, that's what saved my knee from breaking in half.
Now, for most parents and most kids as well, a traumatic experience like that would have been it for judo. It would have been done at that point, right?
It took me almost 2 years to learn how to walk again and play sports. I didn't play my next sport until freshman year of high school, where I tried to play tennis.
Wow. So
I just can't imagine Travis Stevens a tennis player. It's not the same image for me.
that would have been a completely different career path had you followed that, right?
No, I suck at tennis.
Okay, you mentioned the fish out of water feeling. Is that something that you felt when you were kind of making the transition from regular player to wanting to achieve greatness in the sport?
For me, no, because I understood from a young age, like my path is different than most, because unlike most people in life, I lost my goal. So from a young age, like I had conversations with my coaches about making the 2004 Olympic team as an 18-year-old, because as a junior, like I won the junior nationals, like I won all the local competitions. We could kind of like see that path in the States of making the team. Now, granted, was that really a reality? Probably not. But the conversations were happening. Kind of like middle school coaches talk about where their kids are going to go to D1 college and get recruited. Like those conversations happen, but they don't come reality. And then when I lost it all and I had lost the sport, like you got to think about how old I was, and then how long I had spent in the sport, and what that equates to in my life. Like 50% of my life had just now been wasted and lost, and I couldn't play sports at all. So I had played sports from the age of 5 to 11, 2 sports a day, all through a kid.
What else did you play?
Soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, just as a kid. Judo was always the, not after school, but the late night thing to do. So after school was always the school sports, and then we'd go to judo practice after. And then when I came back with almost like a vengeance, and this mentality of, if we all started together and we came up together, when I left and came back, guess who's not with the group anymore? So I came back with a mentality of, I had to play catch up, and when I started and had to play that catch up to get to where my peers were, where I wanted to be with, when I got there, they kind of retired. Or like went on to, like, one guy started wrestling and he won like a Division II national title. One guy is like an Air Force fighter pilot. Like they just went on to different professions, but we were all highly competitive. I just stuck with judo. But that chaser's mentality started from right when I came back. And
now,
then,
it's not a bad thing to be an underdog, right?
Correct, because then when I got to the national stage, I was the kid who just got there. And then when I got to the international stage, I was an American. Americans all suck at judo, trying to play catch up. So my whole career kept that swirled path of I know how to play catch up and I know how to bridge the gap from like where I need to go, where everybody is, and where I'm at today. And I understand the development path to get there.
What was it about judo then? It sounds like you played so many different sports and you seem like a natural athlete, right? You probably have the mentality to succeed in sports. You could have, gone and played baseball professionally or something maybe. What was it about judo that stuck?
I can't play baseball professionally because the idea that I can stand 90 feet away from a guy that can throw something as hard as he wants in my direction, there's nothing I can do about it except for take a stick and hopefully block the ball seems ludicrous. So that just didn't work. I stopped that real quick. So once the kids started throwing the ball, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me.
You didn't trust them?
It's not even trust, it's just...
Why have I got this stick if I can't hit him with it?
Well, if he hits me with the ball, why can't I hit him with the stick?
Yeah. 1 for 1.
Right? Eye for an eye.
I have the better tool here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, throw your ball.
But no, it is a good point, like how you didn't find yourself going on to, say, the football field or the wrestling mat. It was
There is
judo.
no other sport that is as competitive or as physical as judo, where like I get to physically grab another human and beat them. Like we could talk about wrestling, we could talk about jiu-jitsu, but at the end of the day, like you can't, if there's no physical thing to grab onto in wrestling, like you're not really grabbing them and controlling them. You're more like their hooks and like you need that engagement. But for judo, like I get to chase you down and beat you.
It's a very primal thing, isn't it? That
Yeah.
one-on-one combat. But judo as well, I think the one thing I find appeals to a lot of judo players as well is the whole concept of ippon, right? Is the sudden victory. It's like at any one moment, you could win or lose that match in just that split second. It's like
And a
that
split
ritual
decision.
death, right?
Yep.
And it's like, I think other sports, not many have it. A wrestling pin doesn't happen by accident. It's a ground out process.
It's a grind.
A submission is usually something you work towards, but an ippon can just bang. It's
You're done.
over and done, right? Is that something that you think as well is something special at judo, right?
Yeah, and our rule set supports that feeling. So it breeds that higher level competitiveness and aggression, and it rewards it. Where jiu-jitsu and wrestling can not reward it per se. Because if I'm wrestling in the NCAA rule set, I actually have to get up on bottom and the guy can just ride me out. Like we're no longer really physically going at each other at that point.
Yeah, it's high stakes, high reward judo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Will, you're gonna ask.
I was just going to ask, what was it like coming back after that injury at 11 years old? Like, how difficult was it to get back on the mat after that?
It was. So the one thing about me that's different than most people is I can't stand being bad at anything. So like when I played tennis, right? Like I sucked. I had never played before. I'd never really swung a racket, but it was the only sport I could sign up for at the time because I didn't have whatever that medical thing is you have to get in high school. Graduated a long time ago.
Physical or something?
It's a physical thing you got to get, and I didn't get it in time to sign up for wrestling or any of the other sports. But I would actually go at like 10 o'clock at night to the courts down by my house just to practice serving, because when I showed up the next day for class, like I didn't want to be bad at it. Like if this is how good the team is around me, I just don't want to be the outlier who's bad. I'm okay with being in the middle. I just can't be bad. So like when I came back, I just couldn't get enough because I was trying to just not be bad. When you first come back, it's just, let's just not suck right now.
I had a moment in my mind there where I'm just imagining, like those martial arts movies where the guy's got this insurmountable challenge and he goes off somewhere by himself and practices like, breaking boards or running up and down some stairs or something because he knows he's got to get to that. I'm just thinking that's not fiction, right? That's the kind of thing, you're the
real.
guy who would literally, you would go off by himself and do something over and over and over and over that needs to be done.
That nobody would ever know about, so that when I came back, they'd be like, oh, he just got it at class. And nobody would ever speak of it.
And what about in judo? Because I'm imagining you would have done that countless times in your judo career too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us
All
any
the time.
examples of something like that?
I mean, I would go on runs at like 1 o'clock in the morning for like 3 miles. And I would go on like mandatory runs, like around a lake that's in Wakefield, just because when I get halfway, there's no return. Like once I'm gone, like the first mile is easy, but by the time you come back, you can either finish or you can go back the same direction. You might as well have finished anyways.
What about the technical side of things as well? Like, are there any stories of you, kind of putting some bands on a tree and doing like countless reps of uchikomi sort of late at night by yourself? Was there anything that you just locked yourself away and worked on like that too?
When I was in high school, we used to have, you see it in houses sometimes where, like the divider between a room and a room, there's like pillars that go up, and you see like holes in them where like normally they put like stained glass or a glass thing. Well, we had these just pillars, and I used to put bands through the pillars when nobody was home, and I used to just practice the speed of my rotation, not so much the power and the technique, but just how quickly I could get in and get out, and just work on the actual like timing of the rotation, just to, because that was the one thing I was always lacking, because I used to be a short fat kid.
So how old were you at this stage?
I was a freshman/sophomore in high school.
So around about that age, you're already showing, as we say, those traits, those characteristics of somebody who is a driven athlete. Now, at this stage, I
I
imagine...
started a driven athlete
Right.
because once I came back and I saw where everybody was, I had to not be trailing the group.
But I imagine that when you get to a certain age, those traits, the coaches are going to look at you and they're going to think, man, this kid has outgrown us. Like, we are not the coaches to take this kid to the next level. Did that happen for you?
That was one of I've had a few instances in my career when you look back and you go, we didn't know it at the time, but I had advantages that most people don't have. And that was one of the advantages where my coaches knew when high school was over, I wasn't staying.
So what did they do with you? Like, what at that point, like, did they say to you, did they sit you down? And who was it? Tell us about who your coaches were at that period and how they helped you get
So I had a coach called Jason Harai, who still coaches today, and Byron Reddit, and I had a sponsor named Fred Ogden, who runs his own club now. And we used to sit down at Denny's every night or McDonald's after every class and talk about, where we were going, the pluses and minuses. We used to pull out a notebook and say, this is what this school has, this is what this school has, this is what this one has, this is the cost of going here, what if we went to Japan? At one point, we went down the road of like, what happens if I just go on a crab boat for a season and I make 30 grand and I just train for the other 9 months of the year? That was one of the options on the table. Like, we were like problem solving like professionals when I was in high school to figure out a way to make this happen.
Sounds like you were very lucky to have such a smart group of people around you at that stage.
That was one of the advantages that like I had. Like, I look at some people in their career and they're not doing the right things. They complain about money, they complain about coaching, they complain about, being out of shape. And they're all problems that can be solved. Like, I see some parents traveling with their kids and they complain about money. Well, then you can't help your kid. Like, if your kid's not prepared enough to step on that mat and win by himself, then he shouldn't be at the event. And you shouldn't be there either because you have money problems. So what are we doing?
So for you, what was the next stage then? After that high school, you sat down with the guys, like you said, you mapped out potential options for you. What was the next stage?
And we had this plan. It was me and Marty Malloy. She had actually moved from home to live at my grandparents' house to train full time. So I used to roof from 5 to 5, and then we used to train from 6 to 9. And that was the daily grind. And then me and her sat down with the team and we said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to San Jose State, we're going to go to OTC, we're going to go to Jason's, we're going to go to Jimmy's, and we're going to kind of bounce around to these different clubs and take the best that everybody had to offer. And San Jose State was the first one.
So San Jose State, a lot of Jiu-Jitsu fans probably aren't too clued up on this, but San Jose State is considered one of the best training centers for judo in the United States, correct?
For colleges, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if
So-
you want to go to college, that is, the typical answer for uneducated judo players in the country.
No, that sounds like an amazing opportunity for a kid of your age at that phase in your life, but things didn't work out for you. Could
Because
you tell us
I
what
was
happened?
I was uneducated
In what sense?
in the sense that I labeled doing judo and going to college as being the same thing. So
So you mean uneducated academically or in life?
in life,
Right.
in life, like, yes, there is judo at San Jose State. So there's a college and there's a judo school and they're on the same campus. But at the end of the day, right, like, I could go to a jiu-jitsu school down the road and there's a college down the road. Like, it doesn't have to be on the same side. But the community of judo does just that and says, if I want my kid to go to college, the judo and college have to be on top of each other. So like Jimmy's, for example, is 15 minutes north of Boston, which is probably the biggest college town in the world. Yet kids go to San Jose State for judo in school. Yet we have, like 350 colleges in like the Boston, New England area within driving distance of each other. So when, yes, that was like the allure, because I didn't understand that colleges were next to schools, judo schools. People just don't think that way.
Was there any point at this point in your life where you were like, fuck it, I don't want to do judo anymore?
At this point,
Yeah.
no.
So you were judo all the way from when you were a little kid all the way up to this
Everything I did in life supported my judo career.
Did you want to go to the Olympics when you were 7 years old?
No.
No. When did that come in?
That came in when I was about 10, 11, 12, and it happened right around the 96 Olympics, 1997, 98. We were walking through a Nordstrom's and I saw the podium jacket of Atlanta. And it was like a starter windbreaker kind of a thing, and it had like the American, like the torch with like an American flag and the rings.
1996. We can imagine.
Yeah, right? But as a kid, it was the thing I couldn't have that I really wanted. And that's like, that moment is when the Olympic dream started.
Wow. Wow.
Because
The windbreaker.
you went from watching it and going, oh, that's really cool, to doing a sport that you really love, to finding out it's in the Olympics, to seeing the thing you want to have that everybody has.
Something
have it like-
tangible.
Did you have
Yeah,
like
something tangible.
Did you have an Olympic hero that you kind of like looked after?
Not until later on in life, because the Olympics was the hero.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
It's like I've never had like an individual person I've looked up to. I look up more to like the ideas and philosophies of what I'm trying to do.
So the San Jose thing didn't work out. So how long did you stay there, and what was the next step after that?
2 years.
You stayed there 2 years.
I was 2 years.
It wasn't working the whole time?
It was. And then, I fell into, for lack of, a better term, a lie as to what the program had to offer and what it was doing. And, when I started training there were 60 athletes on the mat. When I left, there were 5. And me and Marty were 2 of the 5. So it was just, they weren't providing the support. I wasn't there because I was doing other things. And it was time to move. And that's when I went home.
All right, you went back to Washington.
I went back to Washington.
How long did you stay there for then, before you moved on again?
I was there for probably 5-6 weeks.
You went back to your original coaches and sat down and had a chat with them?
Yep. And I hired a kid full-time who didn't have a job. I paid him daily. I bought all his food. He stayed with me. He lived with me. And his sole purpose was, when I said it's time to train, we train.
So, in fact, you had a full-time training partner at your disposal?
Yep.
Wow.
So some of the things we used to do was, okay, we're going to show up. We are not going to set a clock. And I am going to go until you don't stand up anymore. And we used to go for like 45 minutes and just beat the crap out of each other, for lack of a better term. And then we used to go get lunch. And then we used to come back and do it again. Then we used to go to the fields and set up cones and run sprints. And then we used to go to the gym and then used to come back and do it again. And that's what we did all day.
No coach? This is kind
Nope.
of you setting your training regimen?
We were young and we just fought. that's what we did. And then we used to go talk to the coaches afterwards. They knew we were doing it, but we used to just go down to like a local YMCA and say, hey, can we use a racquetball court and set up mats? Sure. Okay.
How long did that arrangement last, you and this training partner?
Until I left.
Which is about like how long?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
So what was the next stage then? I mean, I'm sure that everything's very methodical, right? You have a plan for everything, and like you said, you sat down, you figured out San Jose with your mentors, and it didn't work out. So when you got back, was there another process of, okay, what's next for Travis?
I had gone to a training camp in Boston with Jimmy's at his school in the summer, so months before this had ever happened, and he had pitched me on the idea of coming out to his school. And I'm one of the like 3 people Jimmy has ever pitched to come out to his school, because Jimmy doesn't believe in recruiting or talking to athletes. He's like, if you want my help, I'm here. If you don't, then do what you gotta do.
That's interesting. So
don't
he's
care.
there for people to come to him, but he doesn't actively go out and invite them.
Judo doesn't help support families. It doesn't help support himself. So it's this massive headache for everybody. So if you want help, then like you kind of have to do it on the coach's terms for the most part, because nobody's paying him to be there at a certain time to help us. So yeah, recruiting just doesn't happen.
And Jimmy's been your main coach ever since?
Yep.
Wow.
Not since this point. That happened later. So he pitched me on recruiting, and then went back to San Jose State, got thrown out, went home, won the US Open, went back home and developed a game plan of what are we going to do. And again, crab fishing was thrown onto the table, Jason's was thrown onto the table, and Jimmy's was thrown onto the table. And we made a choice to go to Jason's, because we felt that when we looked at everything, it was the best thing to do for my career at that point in time.
Gotcha. So how long did you stay with Jason? And could you explain a little bit about who Jason is and where this was?
Jason was an Olympic silver medalist in Barcelona, and he was going to be the 2008 Olympic coach. So we are in 2006, and he's going to be the 2008 Olympic coach, which was one of the factors as to why I went. And when I looked at everything on paper, Jason had a bunch of athletes who were 18 to 23, 24 years old. They were all ranked nationally. They were all potential Olympians in 2008. And Jimmy had a style that was just like mine right now. It was very hard-nosed, aggressive, fighting, gripping. We're going to just beat the crap out of you until you give in mentality. Jason had more of the technical development, I don't care where my hands are on the gi, but I'm going to throw you for ippon mentality, and that's my goal. I don't care about newaza, I don't care about strategy, I don't care about gripping. I'm just going to throw you for ippon. And when we looked at it at the time, I was a hard-nosed kid. I fought really hard. We felt that being inside the club with the guy who was going to be in the chair with me on the day of what I was trying to accomplish, adding something to my game that I didn't quite feel I had, which was the technical aspect of it, it was the best fit because his athletes were coming up and Jimmy's athletes were a little bit older.
Gotcha. So this is 2006. This is 2 years out from the Beijing Olympics, and that was your first Olympic experience, right?
Yep.
So you stayed with Jason through till that point?
Till that Olympics and then left.
Right. Tell me about your first Olympic experience. I mean, that's a big deal for anybody. First of all, it must have felt like an achievement even going, right? Because that's like the bucket list stuff. The list of dreams that you had was to go to the Olympics.
And it was the biggest mistake I had, and you just said it.
Really?
Biggest mistake I ever made was making it a goal to go to the Olympics.
The goal should have been
Winning.
winning
It should
the
have never
Olympics,
been anything else.
not just participating.
Because what happened was we had a trials in 2008, and it was held in June, and the Olympics was in August. So what happens when you have a trials in June and the Olympics in August, and everyone's goal is to make the team?
You prepare for the trials, right?
Yep. And then what happens? Like, what would be your next best logical step?
Between the
Yeah.
trials and the Olympics?
Yeah.
Well, you have to prepare for the Olympics, right?
But who do you prepare with?
Those guys you just beat.
Guys you've been training
the
against,
US Open?
preparing
Well,
for
why?
the
They're
US
not going
trials?
to the Olympics.
They're not going to help you.
Exactly.
You need somebody to train with, though, right?
But everybody who's not going to the games now has a 4-month vacation before what happens?
They all disappear.
Yeah, everyone disappeared.
Huh. So you were left 8 weeks out or 2
Are
months
there,
out
are there
from the
some
Olympics.
alternates and stuff, right? that you could train with? Olympic alternates?
Well, you would assume USA Judo would be on the page of nationally getting everybody together and preparing for the biggest stage in the world. You would think that would happen, but you know.
You think they'd have the resources there to support their Olympic medal hopefuls?
Correct. And I wasn't necessarily an Olympic medal hopeful. I was 22 years old and not exactly winning world championships or world level events at the time.
But you were training all together as part of the Olympic team. You were the other.
So you hired your private training partner again?
No, I was broke.
Wow.
So what did you do?
I was roofing before. I just made do. And at the time, like, I hadn't really thought about it because I had just accomplished my goal of qualifying for the Olympic team. So what happened was when you train for fights, and people in MMA say this all the time, like you have a 12-week period where like you need to really like go through the ebbs and flow to make sure you're at like the peak of the chart at the day of your event. Well, you went through the ebbs and flows for your event and you were at the peak, and then you had this emotional drop off of satisfaction. You're not necessarily going to climb to a higher level. And qualifying for the Olympics in the United States is easy. Like when I look back on it, I'm like, we weren't even doing judo. We were a bunch of idiots playing patty cake trying to throw each other. Because when you look at like the Olympic podium and where USA Judo is, it's Pee-wee soccer versus the English Premier League. So I needed to not think about that and think about how I'm going to keep going up, and it should have been a stepping stone instead of an accomplishment.
So how did your 2000 Olympics performance go? How do you feel about that looking back at it?
I think it went as well as it could have gone, given where I was at in the sport. I think I competed at the best I had been at that stage in my career.
For a 22-year-old kid who'd come up with
who had not won like a big European or Asian level event, but had won some matches, I think I fought to the best of my ability on that day. Like, I barely lost to the Olympic champ. I beat the European champion. I barely lost to the guy that not only won the Worlds the year before, but also bronze. Like, we're talking like barely lost.
And let's put this in perspective, that these are athletes who have had years of training preparation, and
professional
a massive
teams.
amount of resources put into them for that, multiple, probably 8-year cycle for the Olympic Games. And a couple of months out, you were on a roof at 22 years of age.
Yeah, I was living in a shack in the back of a gym.
Wow. So I guess in a way, even though you didn't achieve your Olympic dream at that Olympics, you would have taken away a lot from that experience, and that would have enabled you then to formulate a better plan for when you go back to the States.
Correct.
So what was the next step? You got back to the States and you're like, man, okay.
I packed up all my crap and I left.
Left Jason's.
Yep.
And where did you go?
I went to Jimmy's.
Immediately after the Olympics?
Immediately after. I went home, I put everything in my car, I flew home, flew back, started training, and then got in my car, called a buddy up from Boston. He drove his truck up, we packed everything up, and to Jimmy's place.
So you train your entire life to get to the Olympics, right? This is like one of your biggest goal, like the thing driving you forward. You finally get to the Olympics, and then I assume you don't perform how you wanted to. I mean, I just assume you wanted to get a medal or something, right? So I don't know, what did that experience do after you had this goal your entire life and then you don't achieve it?
In 2008, it left me angry, not upset, because the matches I lost, I actually lost. So like, I don't get angry when I get beat. I get angry when I don't do my job, or I feel like I've been screwed. Those are like my two triggers. Like, I underperform, or I feel like I'm legitimately getting screwed by somebody.
I feel like, did it like re-energize you? Like, okay, now I really understand the level now in 4 years.
I saw where everybody was at, and I was able to rationalize where people are in their everyday competitions and where people are going to be, and the level change. It's not that I hadn't fought those guys before, but I never fought those guys on the day of the Olympics. And when you talk about the millions of dollars and resources that go into athletes to perform on one single day, they are slightly better, slightly stronger, slightly faster on those days.
I know for like me, like when I'm preparing for a competition and I go out there and I lose, it's like the most depressing thing in the world for me. Like, did you experience any of that or anything?
Nope.
Nothing like that?
Not at that games, no.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, if anything, it just made you more determined.
Yeah, because I was never at a level of winning. So the easiest way to put it in 2008 is there's all these guys that fight black belts, right? Do they really win? Are they really going to win? Do they really show up to win the Worlds? No. They're just showing up to try their best. And that was where I was. And that's why you see those guys hanging out at the event afterwards and not feeling ashamed because they underperformed.
Because they never had that expectation.
They never
did
had
they?
that expectation. Remember, my goal was to, 6 months ago, make the team. I can't set a new goal of winning it. I mean, I can, but is it real? Like, it hadn't really resonated.
So in that case,
I didn't live it.
So in that case, then, when you get back from Beijing, 2008, and you make that choice to go to Jimmy's, you're looking ahead to the 2012 London Olympics. Was your gold at that Olympics?
Yeah.
It was, right?
Yeah.
Because, as you said, the whole goal was just to get to the Olympics.
There was no question of,
Right.
Are we going to qualify for the 2012 Olympics? That was never in question.
Because as a competitor at that stage as well, you've now got to the pinnacle of international competition for judo, right? The Olympic Games, and I imagine
No, not yet.
not yet.
Not yet.
I mean, I'm talking after Beijing.
Yeah, not yet.
Really?
Yeah. Like, have you ever been to your jiu-jitsu school and you see, the different cliques and groups, or, at an IBJJF event? Like, you see, those upper-tier athletes kind of, talking to each other, gravitating towards each other. It's not because, the other black belts in the room, they're not at the pinnacle. They're not at that level. And I was not a part of that group yet. And that was that thing I was trying to chase, was to be a part of that group. Those guys that always medaled, always won, expected to win, the guys that people didn't want to fight in the bracket and the division. Nobody wants to go to the bracket and go, I got Puchecho first round, great. Guess we're going to have an early lunch.
But is it a mental thing that you had to flip a switch or something, or?
You have to convince the world of that reality. You don't place yourself in that group, because then you're never really accepted. The group has to almost accept you as that.
Actually, that's something, before we go back into the whole athletic journey. You're a personable guy, You're also a very professional guy. You know what needs to be done to get the job done. But at the same time, you don't strike me as the kind of guy who would, A, be untrue. You wouldn't necessarily play that political game of ingratiating yourself with other people just to advance your career. Is that something that has come around to, hamper you? Has it blocked you from certain things in your career?
No. I mean, winning and losing is an idea. You don't, when we talk about being a part of that group, you don't necessarily have to have conversations with those. That's kind of just an example, but that doesn't mean that those group of people don't respect you in such a way. The easiest way I think I could put it in jiu-jitsu terms is Gordon Ryan, right? When we look at Leandro Lo, Puchecha, Bernardo, a lot of these bigger named guys, I don't think that we would see in jiu-jitsu as the elite Hall of Fame level guys, right? Sanji would be one. I don't think any of them gave him the light of day when he was winning EBIs in these super fights. That mentality switched the second he won ADCC. So now he's a part of that group, even though he doesn't necessarily communicate with them. He's grouped into now ADCC champions. So he's part of that thing of the cyborgs and these athletes. And
Gotcha.
that's kind of what you're striving for, to be a part of that premier group in the sport.
And Gordon's kind of always talked about himself as a part of that group. I feel even.
But the group did, he placed
Yeah,
himself
yeah.
there,
They didn't want him.
They didn't want him, but now they can't.
But then you kind of prove
Can't
it.
ignore him
They
anymore.
can't
hell
ignore
no.
him anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the mentality.
So your mentality is then that results speak for themselves, the hard work pays off, that's how I get to where I need to be.
Yeah,
Right.
I
But
wanna-
judo is a political thing, right?
very.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chase.
I wanted to ask about how you switched from wanting to make the team, make the games, to wanting to win. Like, what did you see your performance at the first Olympics and say, I can win, or how did you make that your new goal?
That happened shortly after, because when we looked at the results of everybody in the U.S. apart from Ronda Rousey at the time, nobody actually ever won medals. Like, I think she was the only person who actually brought home medals. The rest of us brought home like a 2-2 record, which was really good. And it kind of like laid a path of, if this is what everybody's doing from the States and these are our results, I can't do that if I want something else. So let's just not do that and do something different. And then the results kind of started to come. And then when I made the switch to Jimmy's, my career actually took a big plummet. Like, I think I had my worst competitive career in 2009.
After the Olympics?
After the Olympics.
So, wow, that sounds like a big drop-off after performing so well and against expectations, really, at 2008. Let's be very clear that people talk about the Olympic cycle, but it's 4 years, and for 4 years is a very long time. And it's not like you just show up at the Olympics and then you go away and you show up 4 years later. There's a lot happening in between those
Correct.
two events, right?
Yeah.
So what was going on then? Like, what happened that you suddenly felt that it wasn't going so well?
Believe it or not, after the Olympics, it should be the year that like the people who are climb very quickly, because the top tier guys are now on vacation. Like, they're resting, waiting for the next qualification, letting their bodies recover. I actually went like 14 and 50, I think, in an entire year, and that included our nationals, which had 4 matches out of 14.
It's not a great record.
No, it wasn't. It was pretty bad. But I sat Jimmy down in the office and we talked about all my problems, like the weightlifting, the travel, the weight cutting. We kind of like put everything out on the table, and we revamped my weightlifting program. I left the gym I was currently at, and I actually started lifting on my own out of an LA Fitness. And then 2 months later, I bronzed in Paris, which is technically one of the hardest tournaments in the world.
Yeah, Paris Grand Slam
2010.
is right up there, right? It's like
Yep.
it's one of the major tournaments in the world. So you got like just massive depths of European talent, but from everywhere. It's probably right up there with like the
A world
Olympics,
championships,
right? World
yeah.
championships.
It's like a step below.
I've
But-
seen you credit your strength and conditioning program as like a major factor in your success. What did you change when you left the gym and started doing it on your own?
So when Jimmy fights, and he is a very much that wrestling style, like conditioning, grinding, I'm gonna run you over, I'm gonna grip, and I'm gonna outwork you. I have a natural strength to me because I used to be a fat kid and I carried around a lot of weight, and then I lost it, but the muscle stayed. So I had natural strength training as a youth.
Roofing will do that to you too. I
Yes.
think.
Roofing would too, because I used to
Give
just
you
carry
enough.
sheets of plywood, 80-pound shingles up and down ladders for 8 hours a day. And so I used a lot of power. And when I took the year to kind of go down Jimmy's strength and conditioning route of conditioning and making sure I can work as hard as I can for 5 minutes, I lost the ability in my matches to apply the power I needed to do the type of judo I did. And when I lost that, I lost my ability to score. I never got tired, but I never had the ability to throw the way I normally did. And then when I took that away and I put myself back onto a different weightlifting program and I got that strength back, well, the conditioning side was easy.
You get a lot of that from the mat, right?
You get a lot of it from the mat. And I'd already had a year of it. So then when I switched into the weightlifting program to get my strength back, the conditioning stayed. And when I added the power, the medals just started coming one after another.
I imagine you've probably got a few questions about the strength and conditioning, huh?
Well, actually, I was just wondering, like, it sounds like you made the right decision to take it upon yourself to figure out your strength and conditioning. But what changed when you went over to Jimmy's school? Was the other guy's name
Jason.
Joe? Jason. Like, what did he work with you on? What did you gain from working with Jimmy?
The easiest way to describe it is when you're learning a martial art, you learn all these like individual techniques. Jimmy gave us a system, and then inside the system you just plug and play your techniques. And if your technique doesn't fit inside the system, well, it just goes away.
Yeah, because you're a fully formed athlete at this point, right? You're 22 years of age, you go to Jimmy. Your judo game is probably pretty much well set at this point, right? You've been drilling X amount of throws, you know what works for you, your body type, your personality, and so on. At that stage, a coach isn't going to come in and make like major changes in your game, right? Would you say
They do.
They do?
Yeah.
How is that so?
99% of athletes don't know how to win.
So
Winning.
what is it that Jimmy told you then that taught you how to win?
How do you learn how to win?
Yeah.
You understand the game.
That you're playing.
Yeah.
So he was working with you more on things like strategy and
Strategy, gripping, movements, patterns, when to move, when not to move.
seems more conceptual.
Yeah, like most people in judo couldn't tell you, like, do you walk to your left or your right? Well, it depends if the guy's left-handed or right-handed. It depends if he grabs high right or cross grips. Like, which way do we go? Like, we have an answer for it. And when you have the answers, then judo gets, like, white belt level easy.
Because do you think other people are more focused on the technical details of a specific throw?
Yeah.
You know, grip here, turn
Grip here,
hips
do
there.
here, do that. Like, and at the end of the day, like, all those minute details go out the window for every half inch the human body grows. Because then the whole technical side of the sport changes.
And you're just kind of just like relying on instinct
Yeah.
beforehand? Yeah.
You break it down into like just a conceptual idea of what it is you're trying to do and accomplish. Like, I can throw anybody in the world if I can put my back on your chest. Okay. Simple as that. Nothing else matters.
So the question isn't of how do I throw this person, the question is how do I get my back there?
Exactly.
So that's the part, that's the kind of stuff that you were working on with Jimmy.
Yeah. How do we put ourselves in positions where we can win and our partners can't?
It almost sounds similar to, like, you're talking about systems and these, like, conceptual things as training with Danaher in a way.
Yeah, same. That's why me and John, I think, got along really well, and why I progressed so fast is because I already know how to learn conceptually and apply what's being taught in that manner. Like, I get it. So John can show me something that I have never seen before in class, I've never seen in Jiu-Jitsu at all, and I can do it that class against the people in the room and get it to work. Because I get the human body, I understand how it moves, and I understand your mentality as a grappler and a Jiu-Jitsu player, what you're going to do. Because you guys all have instincts and you guys all are taught to move a certain way.
What was your first contact with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as we know it? Because you were a lifelong grappler. I imagine you would have been so 100% focused on judo, you would have been like, nah, I simply don't have
It was when I
time
was
for
at
that.
San Jose State.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't, like, the 2 hours a day wasn't enough for me because I know that the teams in France and the guys in Japan are training twice a day, 3 times a day. And if they're up here and I'm down here and they're training 2 to 3 times a day, I have to train 6 times a day because if they're 23 and I'm 23, well, I'm just never going to be there.
So you sought out extra training and it was jiu-jitsu?
I got a name of Dave Camarillo that trained at AKA at the
Who,
time.
interestingly, also has a
Has
very strong judo
A
background.
judo background, and he was within driving distance of San Jose, and he held classes in the morning and, believe it or not, very late at night.
Now, for a lot of people who maybe they don't know, Dave Camarillo, he is a pretty high-ranking black belt now. He's been around for a long time. He came up alongside guys like BJ Penn back at Half Gracie's in San Francisco way back in the day. Later left halves. But Dave, again, is a lifelong judo practitioner. Him and his brother Dan, they grew up practicing judo. And they were national level, right? In the United
And
States?
international.
And international.
Yeah, I believe Dave, if memory serves me right, he's medaled at A-level events as a judo player.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have to be good to get to that level alone, but to win.
To win medals, yeah.
So I can imagine that training with Dave must have been pretty good for you.
Dave did a very good thing for me because he never showed me jiu-jitsu.
Really?
Yeah, never
You
once.
just worked on judo.
No, we just trained.
Just trained, and then you soaked up what he was doing.
I problem solved like any smart professional athlete would do. My, for lack of a better term, oh shit meter is fairly good. So I understand even if I don't know what you're gonna do to my foot, I understand what's bad and what's not. Like it resonates with me that I am not in a good spot right now. How do I get to somewhere where I feel more comfortable?
So when you guys were training, were you training using judo rules, or were you just letting it go on the ground?
We
or?
did both actually. Like we would actually do stand up, like just judo every once in a while. I'd be like, yeah, let's just do a little bit of stand up. Okay, let's do a little bit of grappling. Okay, well, how about you train with John Fitch? Okay, how about you train with Josh Thompson? Like, we would just start training, and like those guys aren't jiu-jitsu guys; they're like MMA guys at the time. We're going like way back to like
Mid
2005,
yeah.
right? Like,
So you're doing no-gi and doing some wrestling with those guys as well, seeing as they were MMA players? Or
they
was it
would
in
put the gi on. Yeah, they would do a little bit of both, and then
Dave would make them put the gi on.
I think they would willingly put it on. They would just, and then in the mornings I would show up at like 7 a.m. and Dave would be teaching a private, and he would let me sit in on it to be like the partner, and I would get this free birth of knowledge from whatever he was teaching.
I mean, they probably were quite grateful to have somebody like yourself on mat as well, right? Because MMA
Yeah, I
guys,
think
they
it's
need
like
bodies, right?
And I was somebody who would push the pace because that's that judo mentality. We do what we have to win. Like, I'm known for like hard cross facing. My chin's gonna go in your eye socket. I'm gonna put my face. I'm gonna try to break your cheekbone. Like, because I have to go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah,
if
you
I
don't have
can't-
time to work in like you do in
Nope.
jiu-jitsu, right?
So if you're holding onto my leg and I'm in your half guard and I have to pin you, like, and you don't let it out, well, I have to figure out a way to make it happen in 5 seconds, and technique goes right out the window at that point, and we go straight physicality.
So your contact with Dave back in San Jose days, when you left San Jose and you did the whole Olympic thing and then moving on from Jason's and going to Jimmy's, did you continue to dabble at all in any jiu-jitsu style of training?
Not once.
So when did that come back into it?
That came back in 2012, and I actually forgot jiu-jitsu was even a sport.
Because you
Yeah.
were so 100% focused on
I was
judo.
so
Yeah.
100% focused on judo.
So let's go back a little bit then, because we're kind of skipping ahead 6 years at this point, right?
Yeah.
But we were talking about you went through this turbulent kind of post 2008 Olympics, and your career
Just real
was
quick,
kind of.
but you liked jiu-jitsu. When you started it, you liked it? Or what was your impression of jiu-jitsu when you first started there?
I couldn't even tell you that you got points for passing the guard at that point. Like, I didn't know because we trained. Like, that was the mentality. Like, I would just kind of watch Dave teach class. I would grab a partner and I'd kind of like do stuff. And then I'm like, when the fuck are we gonna train, guys? Like, and then we would train for 45 minutes with no point scoring brought to anybody's attention.
It's just rolling.
It was like, we are here to get better and become better at whatever it is we're doing, jiu-jitsu, MMA, because it was such a conglomerate of different sports in the room.
So in a way, maybe are you saying that training without paying attention to rules is a better way to improve as an athlete as a whole? Or you
For
don't,
me, yeah.
but it could be different for another athlete or different goals maybe?
No. I think once you implement like rules and strategies, you digress in the learning process.
That's interesting.
Especially for younger athletes that just don't know.
So going back to the Olympics thing a little bit. So at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, you lost to Ollie Bischoff, right?
Yeah.
And
thank you
then-
for that.
And then I'm sorry, but this well, the thing is that you lost to him again in 2012 in
Thank you
London,
for that
right?
one
Sorry to bring it up. It's just results.
Just so you know, I beat him in the middle there.
Well, what I was going to say was that I remember I met, I forget his name, this is a long time ago, early 2000s, but I met a guy who had competed at the Barcelona Olympics in the 90s, and he had competed in the same division as Hidehiko Yoshida. Yoshida, the well-known guy who went on to compete MMA, had a famous grappling match with Hoist Gracie. They were in the same division, and he was just chatting in the changing room one day, and he was talking about how Yoshida always lost to this one guy, and he's like, yeah, it's Yoshida's boogeyman. There's one guy who's just, Yoshido beat everybody else, but that one guy has just got something that beats him. It's like, was like losing to Ollie in those 2 Olympic Games, was he that guy for you?
He was not.
No.
He was just a better athlete, a more seasoned athlete, and he understood winning and what he needed to do to win in 2008. In 2012, it was just a poor decision on my part.
Gotcha.
And, yeah.
Are you more happy with your performance at 2008 than you were at 2012?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Because your expectations are so much higher for 2012?
No, because I competed to my best in 2008.
You said that's what the thing that makes you mad. You made a poor decision in 2012.
Yeah.
And that's what's.
Yep.
What?
And I feel cheated in 2012.
I've heard some guys say like when they step on the stage of like a big tournament, they try not to put it on a pedestal. You were training against these guys, at Worlds and Nationals or whatever it was. When you got to the Olympics, was there that, obviously you've been training 4 years for this time. Was there that pressure that this is the Olympics, or did you try to treat it like I'm just going out there to do my job?
It's one of those things where like a mat's a mat, a room's a room, the stage doesn't really matter. Like if you're gonna win the Olympic Games, if you're waiting to figure that out at the Olympic Games, you're not winning. Like that just is what it is. There's something to be said with like the Muhammad Ali approach of saying you're a champion and then becoming a champion. The problem is most people is they run their mouths, but they don't actually work. Like
So-
he actually worked in the background.
One person who has a similar approach is, you already mentioned his name earlier, is Gordon Ryan. How long did he go around saying that he was going to be that guy? He was right there. But
Because he sees the same things I see in the sport, which is why he's jumping into the gi. Like, he's going to destroy the gi world.
you really think so?
I do. He's got a professional coach that understands jiu-jitsu probably better than most. His sole purpose in life right now is to break down jiu-jitsu and get his students better. Gordon's sole purpose in life right now is getting better.
He's not running an academy.
He's not running an
yeah.
academy. He's not off doing seminars in Europe for 6 weeks to make 30K. He's not. He wakes up every day at 5 a.m. He drives to the city. He sleeps on the mat. He wakes up. John goes into his office. He reviews the class. He reviews his opponent. He teaches class. Like, there's a system put in place to win, and these guys just don't get that professionalism. That's why Nicky's, 16 years old and beating these guys, is because he's not there to make friends.
So you really think that Gordon said he's going to go compete in the gi next year? You really think that he's going to go all the way?
In all honesty, I came from judo.
Mm-hmm.
I fought Copa Podio for the first time with 8 months jiu-jitsu, like real jiu-jitsu experience.
2013, I remember that.
And I made it to the final rounds, and I lost to Miao on an advantage I didn't know he had because I didn't know how to keep track of the points. So do I think Gordon can do it with like a professional approach? I do. Because I did it. And I did it with less professionalism than when Gordon's doing it because I only did it on the weekends.
So you came back from the Olympics in London, and you said that's when you got back into jiu-jitsu, right? It was
Before London.
Oh, it was just before.
Before London.
But I imagine you probably didn't dedicate too much time to it at that stage.
Almost all of it.
Before the trip to London.
Yeah.
You went hard on jiu-jitsu
Yep.
right before you went to the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Now, I would have imagined that, again, we were talking about the focus required for the Olympics. You would have been so in on judo that you wouldn't have had time to think about
I
jiu-jitsu.
couldn't do judo at the time.
Because of?
I broke my foot.
So you were only able to grapple on the ground.
That's why I started.
Wow. Okay, so what was that point then? You were like, okay, I need to adapt, I need to train, I'm going to seek out some ground training.
In
And
February, I fought an event called the New York Open, which is a goodwill tournament. I got really mad at my opponent. I threw him into the crowd. My foot went in between a metal folding chair. We fell on it.
God, a bear trap.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And I thought I had what's called turf toe, which is when your big toe like rolls over and it hurts. But you
inflammation on a
can,
big joint.
yeah, you can handle it if you have enough pain tolerance. You can just handle it. So I thought that's what I had, and then
How long did you go before you realized it was broken?
Almost 8 weeks.
Ha! I knew you were going to say that because I imagine that
I
your
had
pain
the Olympic
tolerance is higher
Games.
than most,
The
right?
Olympic Games was more important than my big toe.
Yeah, yeah.
So I figured it out. And then like one day I accidentally I flew in a French guy, flew in a German guy, flew in a Japanese guy to help me prepare for London. The whole time my foot was broken and we were doing these rounds. At one point I kicked the Japanese guy and I fell to the ground in tears and I was like, that's it. Like, I got to get this figured out. I flew out to Colorado, found out I had a Liz Frank fracture in the main bone running straight down. My whole bone was split in middle, straight down through the end of my foot.
Jesus.
So rather than put it in a boot, I taped it and then went to Renzo's and did Jiu-Jitsu.
So how did you find Renzo's? Who put you on that path?
Jimmy.
Really? So
Jimmy and
was
Renzo know each other
Right.
from their own business dealings.
Mm-hmm.
He called Renzo that night on the phone. Renzo actually picked up, and he said, "Yeah, it's no problem. Come down, tell him who you are, and take class."
And what did it feel like walking into Renzo's for the first time? I mean, obviously, as a seasoned grappler with, experience of training at the highest level, what was it like going into that room for the first time?
Unimpressive.
Not what you were looking for, maybe?
I'm not impressed by people. Like, I don't meet actors and then like get starstruck. Like, they're just everyday humans and people, and like the awe effect just doesn't do it for me.
I imagine it's
Yeah.
a bit frustrating, almost, trying to adapt to jiu-jitsu. It wasn't what you probably wanted to be doing. How did you feel, like, the actual...
Actually, the one thing I'm very good at is segmenting everything I do.
You
So,
mean like just removing the emotions from it, or?
No, like, I can do jiu-jitsu and I can do judo. Like,
Right.
the way I do jiu-jitsu is not the same that I do judo.
So you said that you were
Like, the whole mentality is different. Like, I've had guys, like, some of my students go, "Hey, can we do a little bit of stand-up and do judo?" And they'll see my mentality switch, and before we even grip, they're like, "No, we're okay."
So it's more intense in judo. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
You just don't understand the difference of dedicating your entire life to something that you have to win at versus a sport that you have 10 minutes to just figure it out. Like, there's no punishment for you passing my guard, especially when I don't care to ever compete at that time.
You said that you were unimpressed upon walking into Renzo's for the first time, but you stuck around. So something must have kept you there,
The first class,
which was with
John. I didn't even
And-
know who John was.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was that like, meeting John for the first time? Because he's quite an interesting
I
character.
thought he was some Australian judo guy teaching jiu-jitsu class at Renzo's because, believe it or not, the first thing he showed was stand-up, and I went, I wonder who gave him his black belt.
And he's not a black belt.
And he's
Well,
not-
he
he
is
is
technically now, but he wasn't at the time,
He
right?
wasn't at the time, but I didn't know that.
But he obviously showed the stand-up to a degree where you thought, that guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. That was the first thing, because they actually had an instructor that knew what he was doing. And then he had showed us something, and then when I had done it in class that day, that's when it clicked that, like, something can be taught and something can be done in a matter of minutes, from I've never seen it to drilling it for 5 minutes to getting it to work in a live scenario.
That place has practically got revolving doors. The amount of people who are coming in and out of Renzo's on a daily basis, a constant changing faces every day. Did John know who you were when you came in?
I would assume so, because he follows most combat sports pretty religiously.
Did he let on that he knew who you were? Did you
Nope.
talk at that first session?
Nope.
So how long before you really started to develop a working relationship with him?
It was after that first class.
Right.
We had a few words, and I told him I'm not here to better my judo. I'm here to learn jiu-jitsu. My whole purpose for being down there was to stay in good enough shape so that when my foot got better, I could go back to judo and not start from scratch. That was my whole mentality. I wanted to have fun in an environment that would keep my grip strong, like keep me in the game of grappling, so that I could come back to judo and prepare for London in a short time frame.
Now, you've trained with people all over the world, coaches, throughout your life. Obviously, you were impressed with John's technical level upon meeting him, but what did you think of him as a coach? Or your impressions of him as a coach?
I've never met somebody who's like me when I coach, I say exactly what I mean, and I want you to do exactly what I say. Don't ask questions. Keep your mouth shut, because the second you throw a what if at me, we're going to go down a rabbit hole so deep that we're wasting everybody's time. Like, techniques in Jiu-Jitsu and in Judo are used for very specific purposes, so when we teach them, they're for that purpose, and if you can't understand that, then get out of my class.
Yeah, John's coaching style, John's teaching style, because teaching and coaching are two different things. His teaching style is so concise, right?
Yep.
He just gives you the exact information you need. It's so clear.
For this
his communication.
situation to handle this problem. And I understood that from class 1 because I came from a high-level background.
And then, of course, the coach-student relationship, there's a lot of personality goes into that dynamic as well. So with you and John, did you think like, okay, I like his vibe, this is a guy that I can have on my side?
And I understood. That was the big thing. Like, I get questions all the time through like social media. They're like, hey, do you think judo would really help my stand-up game? No, I think you should get a new jiu-jitsu coach that teaches stand-up. Judo and jiu-jitsu don't intermix. Not at all.
So jiu-jitsu, you were using jiu-jitsu to kind of keep your game sharp, your grips, strong for judo. You don't think jiu-jitsu has helped your judo in any aspect?
It has in one way, and that's because uneducated people in judo know that I have a jiu-jitsu background, think that I am better on the ground because of it.
Were you known for Nuaza before that?
Before that, yeah.
You were known for Nuaza?
Yeah.
That's just always been part of your judo game.
But
From an early age, from a kid, yeah.
Gotcha. But
My home club is known for good Nuaza.
But it was less perceived to be less dangerous?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You said a word earlier that I haven't heard you say much. You said you wanted to do jiu-jitsu for fun, and it seems that training
That's
has
all
been,
it's ever been.
what does fun play in the role of like judo? I assume like zero. I mean,
Zero.
when did it transition from like a hobby to like a professional thing? And
Day one.
Day one.
I came with that mentality
Dang.
because I had already lost it. Like, I had lost my hopes and dreams. So when I made the choice to come back, I came back with the goal and a mentality in mind.
People make a big deal about your jiu-jitsu journey as well, because you went, in effect, technically, from white belt in jiu-jitsu as like a beginner in jiu-jitsu to black belt in, what, 18 months?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Dave never gave you a belt, never did anything?
We never, that was just not what I was there for. I showed up to classes when I got there on time because his actual class was directly after my class. So I used to go from judo, I used to run to my car, drive down the interstate to the other city to go to his class and hopefully make it on time.
I'm really curious to know, though, when you go into those jiu-jitsu classes at Henzo's, like, were you wearing your judo black belt, or did you put the white, the blue, the purple on at that time?
The white belt.
You really did?
Yep.
Man.
I
can't imagine some, like, clueless jiu-jitsu guy going up, well, that white belt over there, go train
No,
there.
because John handpicked all my partners from day one.
For their safety, I'm sure.
So, yeah.
Can you talk about things you see in jiu-jitsu that you like and things that you don't like? Just, the organization of jiu-jitsu, the sport, the industry.
I like that I can fundamentally teach a technique to like all four of you, and it works regardless of who your partner is. For the most part, like a triangle is a triangle, an armbar is an armbar. It is what it is. For judo, that is not the case.
It needs to be individual?
It has to be, but like his throw to all of you are different. The steps might somewhat be the same, but the way it looks and feels to him is going to be completely different for all of you. And that's something that like kills the growth in judo because it's so hard to figure out, because every time you get a new partner, you almost like relearning all the steps just to figure it out, because I can't put him on my hip the same way I can you because the height's different. I can't use the same grips because I can't get an underhook on him, he's short. It's hard. But for jiu-jitsu, that's not the case. It just works for all body types and all skill levels.
Yeah, it's a little bit more systematic in that sense. Right?
Yeah, because you have the floor. The floor is a giant barrier that like hinders the ability of everybody.
What else do you like about jiu-jitsu? There's got to be some stuff that keeps you coming back to the mat, because like you say, you use the word fun, and it's a less intense, less kill or be killed kind of vibe than judo as well, right? Do you like the kind of the skill development side of things?
I do, and I like that I can train it for extended period of time effectively, meaning I can do 10 6-minute rounds and feel okay tomorrow effectively because I get into it what I put out. So like I don't have to sweep you to like have fun in jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? Like you can sit inside my guard and I can play spider and you can break my grips and we can dance back and forth and nobody can accomplish anything. But we can feel like we were doing jiu-jitsu. That doesn't exist for judo. Like you will catch my right bicep right across your face in the first 10 seconds. That's just the mentality of the sport. So jiu-jitsu gives you that like playfulness when you want to have it, when you're just there to get in shape. You can't just do judo to get in shape. Like that doesn't really exist.
Do you think jiu-jitsu has the potential to be at the level of judo?
No.
Why?
You guys are hindered by the structure of the sport, which is one of the things I hate about it. Like people always tell me like, oh, jiu-jitsu is going to be in the Olympics one day. Jiu-jitsu is so far from being in the Olympics, people just don't understand how the Olympics works. Like you guys don't even have a national governing body.
Yeah, to get a sport accredited for the Olympic Games, it's on a par with high-level international diplomacy, right?
Yeah, like put a national governing body in the States. Now make all the associations living in the U.S. train together and work together and compete under the same flag against the other people inside their associations from different countries. Like just think about like how far off you are from just establishing that mentality in today's culture.
Yeah, right.
Like even if like people behind closed doors went with the mentality of, okay, Gracie Baja, you're competing under the United States. Alliance, you're competing under Brazil. And they just like labeled these different associations into different countries, you're not going to get 50 countries. Judo, I think, had like 180 something countries compete at the Olympics in Rio.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who don't want to see jiu-jitsu in the Olympics at all. Would you kind of agree that even if it ever got to that potential, that it shouldn't be an Olympic sport?
No, it shouldn't. Not if people want it as a profession.
They're going to have to become amateur athletes. Basically, people who train, live as professionals get treated like amateurs. Is that what you think?
No, I just think the ability to monetize a sport outside the constraints of the NCAA, outside the constraints of the IOC, is better for everybody. Like the people running it can make a living, the school owners can make a living. Like,
yeah, a lot of people are really nervous about this talk about jiu-jitsu in the Olympics, and some people are really resistant to it. Like high-level team leaders, like the guys who are
they can't make money at that point. The associations go out the window. They're going to have to work for the NGBs and do like a desk job. They're going to have to coordinate national level events. Somebody's going to have to, the IBJJF is going to have to turn into like an international federation that controls the point system and the international events. And they're going to have to get sponsorships worldwide versus, more locally. Like there's an entire like 3-tier system underneath the IBJJF that would have to be instilled that would then have to make enough money to support it. It's just such a monumental task.
A criticism of many, not just judo, but many Olympic sports is that those sports are basically run by bureaucrats, and they're not even people from those sports.
And then all those people who are in charge of all the associations are then going to have to work for the USOC because they live in this country. And they're going to have to follow USOC guidelines as to what they can and cannot do.
Could some of this explain maybe why jiu-jitsu has exploded in terms of growth as compared to where judo is very much below popularity-wise, or is that?
Judo is below popularity-wise because we have bad management, not because of the NGB, because that doesn't explain wrestling.
And when you say bad management, is that bad management at the club level, at the regional level, the national level?
All levels. all levels.
And is that something that, I mean, I know the answer actually. It is something that is way behind other judo nations in the world, right? You look at the French, you look at the Russians, you look at the Japanese and others out there as well. But it seems like you guys are really, you're fighting from just a massively disadvantaged position.
Well, we're fighting against ourselves because at one end of the spectrum you have the Olympic level athletes, which is the top 1% of the country, we'll call it. And then you have the bottom half of the tier, what's called 50% of just like the grassroots development side. And then you have this middle section of national and international athletes that are trying to get to that 1% and make it. And the problem is you have that 50% of the grassroots level yelling and telling the 1%ers, like, hey, you're not doing anything for me. Like, what are we doing? How are we doing? And then you have this middle tier group trying to make it, asking for support, again, to that top 1%. And yet they don't do anything inside their own system to help support what's above them.
So how do you compare that to those other nations? Because you've been around the world with judo and you've seen what these other countries are doing. What are they doing that the US Judo should be doing?
They just professionalize it, just like they do in Jiu-Jitsu. Like, I know school owners in judo that have 200 students that don't charge money. They do it part-time just for the fun of it.
But then in France, for example, the judo culture there is that...
That's their job.
Yeah, the guys, they're not getting paid that much though. They're not monetizing their judo schools, and they've got kids who pay like €2, which is like $2 to go train.
But they're
and
paid
stuff.
by the city.
And that doesn't happen here.
And that doesn't happen here. So we have a mentality of, 95%, if not more, coaches that do it part-time in this country, trying to tell the professional side how to do their job and get better results. And then we look at them and say, you're giving me part-time athlete with part-time coaching at the highest level, and you want me to turn him into a professional? You've had him for 10 years. You've kind of instilled his work ethic as part-time, and I can't compete against the world with a part-time athlete. And we break a lot of athletes at the highest level because they show up with, we do judo, 7 days a week, 2 hours. Well, I need you to do judo 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we have to make up for lost time. And they can't handle it. The physicality, the stress, the getting yelled at, the reworking and telling like, hey, everything you know is wrong, man. I'm sorry, you can't do that. Like, you can't have your hand on the gi there. You can't do this. You can't do that. Like, you're going to get killed by the Russian, because we're comparing them to the top 1% of judo, trying to get them ready. Because they come to us saying, we want to be an Olympic champion. They don't come to us and say, I want to be a national champion. I just want to be the best judo player I can be with the time I have to develop to the sport. They come to the sport with this part-time mentality. It would be like a guy with a high school diploma working a part-time job trying to get a CEO job with no background. Like, can it happen? It can, but we're talking about like outliers of a spectrum, not a plan to really turn you into a CEO.
What about facilities-wise? These countries, judo is lucky, right? In that you don't need a lot of facilities into practice the sport. You need a cushioned floor, you need the uniform, but a lot more goes into producing a high-level athlete than that.
One of the things that Jiu-Jitsu really exploded with is you guys don't need a lot of space. Judo needs a lot of space.
But
like, I couldn't effectively do judo in this room.
No, for sure.
But 6 people could do jiu-jitsu in this room.
Yeah.
This is probably the size of like most jiu-jitsu schools in the country, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But
I could put 40 people in this room and run an effective class.
But the judo facilities, though, that go into producing a super high-level athlete, you're talking about the training facilities, the recovery, the strength and conditioning. How do the US facilities stack up against what you might see in countries such as France, Russia, Japan, and stuff like that?
The same.
Really? So it's not a question of physical resources?
No, we have all, the United States of America, we have everything we need. Like that's the dumbest excuse in the book.
Yeah, no, I'm because you walk into a
But
high
I
school
hear that-
football team and they've got these gigantic multi-million-dollar gyms, you know.
But for what? Like, why not just let, like, I work out of Mike Boyle's. He's one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the country who lives 15 minutes from my gym. Like, why do I need to have a gym? Like, why do I need to build a school with $1 million gym when I can just let the professional make a living at his profession to train my athletes?
So it's not a question of a lack of resources.
No. I just need the mat space, and I need to run a professional program with a grassroots style to support my elite athletes because they're broke and they're putting everything they have into their dream, which they should be. And the school has to support, and the training center has to support that, which means somebody's got to bite the bullet and teach the kids classes. Sorry.
You think there's also a cultural
Sucks. But it just has to happen.
I think there's also a cultural shift that needs to happen in USA Judo.
Yeah, because our coaches today just won't do it. They just won't do it. Like, I told one of the guys, I go, hey man, why don't you just open up a school, charge $50 a month, and you'll make 150 grand a year? Nah, I'm good. I got a job. I just want to do it part-time. I don't want a paycheck. And then I told him, okay, we'll open up a school, make 150 grand a year, and support all your kids' trainings for all the tournaments they ever have to go to so they don't have to pay for anything, is because the families are kind of broke. Well, you know, building leases and deposits, and it's like, okay, I'm done.
So with these factors in mind, I'm just wondering how long before we see another US Olympic judo medalist of any color?
I have no idea. It's
Doesn't sound good.
It's the Olympic Games, man. Anything can happen.
Right.
We don't have a whole time a lot left, but I want to. We got to talk about 2016. Can you kind of walk us through that experience?
The games, or like the lead up and everything that happened?
The games.
Well, the lead up was insane for a start because you almost lost your leg before the Olympic Games, right? The 2016 Games.
Yep. I almost quit judo. Yeah. In February, I threw a French guy, and I got a really bad concussion. Like, I forgot who my girlfriend was that I'd been dating for a year and a half. Didn't even know her name.
Scary.
I looked at her and I went, did I kill her dog? Because she's looking at me really weird. To my manager.
Wow.
I had no idea who she was. Then she came up and gave me a hug and asked if I was okay, and I went, who the fuck is she?
Jesus.
Had no idea. Still don't really remember the event. And the venue, the parts of the event I do remember are not of the venue because it's been the same venue for 3 years and I know the venue. So my memory of the bus and the like warm-up area and all of that is of somewhere else that I can't place in my mind. And then from there, that took 4 weeks before walking in a straight line to, I think, 6 weeks before I could remember my timeline during a day, to then competing for the first time. And then I went 0-5 at 5 events, straight.
And whereabouts in there was the knee injury as well, the surgery that you had, and I mean, I'm not even talking about before that in 2013. I think it was the broken ankle.
No,
and
the knee surgery happened that summer. I got a really bad leg infection that we didn't know was a leg infection. My whole leg had swollen and my knee had swollen, and people just kind of chopped it up as bursitis. And then I went to 5 doctors that all told me it was bursitis.
What was it?
I had cellulitis, staphoria, and MRSA all in the knee joint and my leg, all at the same time.
So you were lucky not to lose it.
Yeah, I had a red line, I think like 8 inches from my heart all the way up to my belly.
Oh.
Like the doctor said I was probably like 48 to 72 hours away from them just chopping it off in the emergency room.
And how long out from the games was this?
I had surgery in October, I believe.
And the games was the following August?
And the games was the following August.
Wow.
And then I tore my SI joint in November when I came back.
And then the concussion a few months later?
No, the concussion was before all of it had happened.
Oh, this was
So
before
the
then.
whole year of 2015, I went through a concussion, a broken thumb, the knee surgery, and a torn SI joint, and a broken rib. All before the 6-month preparation for Rio.
Did that inform your performance at the 2016 Olympics?
I think it did.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I just threw my hands up into the air, and I was like, the pressure was kind of off, and at the end of 2015, I fought in the Japanese Grand Slam in Tokyo, which is basically a step below Paris. And I took 5th. But I had taken 5th after everything I had gone through in the year. And I had trained for, I think, 6 days for the whole event. Made weight for the first time in months, which for me is a big deal. And when I looked at the result, I kind of laughed because I was like, the best guys in the world struggle to beat me when I'm at my worst. They're not going to beat me when I'm at my best. So my goal was to just be at my best. And from there, it was easy.
And
once I realized how good I was at my worst,
Matt,
because I had actually hit the bottom.
Say if getting hit by a car, it doesn't sound like much worse could have happened in that period, right?
No.
Sounds like you would prefer to have gotten hit by a car.
Just get it all over with
Get
once.
it all over with.
But take us through the games, man. I mean, it's obviously a huge accomplishment, a huge deal for you. What was it like just to go to Rio, to be there this time? What was it like?
Leading up to the games was probably the most relaxing part of my life because I actually was living like an Olympic champion. So like, there was no like question of, am I gonna medal? Like that, like I had passed that point of like goal setting at that point. Like I had now turned it into an anticipation of this day is gonna happen and I'm gonna go through this and I'm gonna win. When every Olympic Games, we always sit down and we pick 10 athletes out of the entire draw that is possible for the Olympics in January. Like, here's what it's looking like, here's where it's going to be, and here's the matchups that we're really going to struggle with if we fight. And in London, believe it or not, that all the matches I fought that day were inside those 10 people. I hand-selected my draw, and then when I saw the draw in London, I went, oh, I'm going to win. I know all these guys like the back of my hand. And then we did the same thing in Rio, and guess what? We looked at the draw and we went, oh, well, all the guys that we planned on are on my side that we've prepared for, but there's some guys in there that can screw this up that we didn't think of that could be potential problems. But then as the day went on, those guys lost. So like all my anticipations of who I was going to fight were people I had already prepared for.
And you're a veteran at this point as well, right? You're a veteran of 2 Olympic Games, of years
I've been
of
top
high
5 in the world for the whole 4 years for the most part. Like I was consistently medaling and winning at every event I'd entered.
So getting through to the games, to the final itself, you had a couple of matches earlier that day, and I think you won 2-3. I think you won 2.
You know what else is interesting, believe it or not? Everybody I fought in London beat me the last time we fought.
Huh.
Everybody I fought in Rio, I had either never fought before or beat me the last time we fought.
Well, that's
They learned their lesson, I guess.
Yeah.
Walk us through the Turkish Valley match there. That feels like that was like the big one, right?
You know what I was doing before I fought Turkish Valley? I got into the shoot, right? They call everybody up 3 matches before, and you stand there and you like prep ready to go. You know what I did? I pulled up a fucking chair and I went. And I started watching the match before like this. And I was just, and there's Turkish Valley standing right there, and I was like, you guys ready? All right, I guess it's time to go. And I walked out.
So he saw that.
Yeah.
Like a nice little bit of gamesmanship there, huh?
No, I just knew I was going to win. I had planned the Turkish Valley match so far in advance in my head that he sold his cards in London about how he develops and how he learns and how he prepares and how professional he is as an athlete. In London, I finished him with the guillotine. I fought him 3 months later at the Europeans, and I tried to finish him with the same guillotine, and he laid me out, beat me. And I went, every time I beat this guy, I'm never going to do it again the same way twice. So I never did Newaza again.
Was he the favorite to win the gold?
Yeah.
And so the match didn't go quite as planned, right? I mean, or maybe
It did.
It did, okay. But you were losing the match.
Yep.
And that was according to plan.
The plan was to keep the Shidos either 1-1 or always be 1 behind and push him as hard as we could, never generating a risk to getting countered with a pickup. When he
Because
beats
the Georgians are so good at that, right?
And he's good at that.
Right.
And for the last 5 years, every time I ever fought him, I go up to my coach, I go up to my training partners, and I go, this is going to be exciting because somebody's getting thrown free pound. It's either me or it's him, but I'm going for broke, and I'm going to throw this guy. Because I needed to see if I could throw him at all leading into Rio. Because I'd already proven I could beat him on the ground. So let's see if we can throw him. So now he comes into the Olympic semifinal with, this guy's going to try to throw me, and I'm going to pick him up and throw him on his head because I've done it the last 5 times in a matter of 4 years. So the one thing I never did was stay on my feet and try to throw him. And then I constantly pressured. And then, like everybody else and every other athlete that doesn't train it, they do the same thing they do in training camps, and they make the same mistakes every time. And when they get pressured and they fear and they think they're going to lose, they bail because the sport allows it. And he bailed. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. And if you go back and watch all of the matches from me and him, he gets up the exact same way. He gets in a 4-point stance, he stands up, and he picks me up because he's strong. And every other time I fought him, I went for the arm and I fell off the top. For 2 years leading up to the games, I drilled pushing people down and choking. Pushing people down and choking. My partners used to get so upset, all the training partners, and they'd go, you never choke anybody. And I go, but I will.
And you did.
And I did.
And that was a nice choke as well.
Can you walk us through the sequence there? Because it seemed like a grip that you were setting up well before.
That's what I mean. Like that. We knew he was going to break at the 4-minute mark because every judo player breaks at the 4-minute mark. When you're pressuring and you're winning, the last minute of the match is always the hardest to fight. For some reason, the guy losing always seems to have all the energy in the last 30 seconds of every fight. I don't know why. I don't know what about winning causes us to get anxiety and we can train for 2 hours, but a 5-minute fight in the last 30 seconds and we can't stand up.
You just got to hold that last. You got the lead. You just got to hold the lead.
We had to keep it close because in judo, you could be up on penalties because they don't count anymore, not until the end. So one score outweighs all penalties. So we just had to push until the last minute, then score, then cause the mistake because now he's tired. He's not ready for the grind because he expected to just pick me up and throw me like he's done the last 4 years. And that was the game plan going into it.
And did you know you had it right away? Right away you knew.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the transition that you went through there from the feet to the ground to the choke?
Basically, I basically hug the top of the head, and then I pick you up as like a unit. So when your head's stuck in my elbow, I can physically pick you up off all fours, and then from there I can snap it underneath. And then once it's in, because he's going to go right to his 4-point stance because he's been trained to do it. Once it's trained into your body and you know how people train and their tendencies when they're no longer thinking and they're running on instinct, you can find the holes to beat anybody.
So he taps. What's going through your mind in that moment?
I was actually shocked. I didn't think he would.
Thought you were going to choke him out?
I know. Panic had set in once I'd sent it in because I'd realized I'd rolled out of bounds.
You thought you were going to get stopped?
Yeah. I'd been screwed over in one Olympic semifinal before. I thought for sure I was going to get stopped. For sure. And I actually pulled so hard on the gi with my left hand to get it as tight as I could because I felt if he had stayed there for 5 seconds and tried to just wait it out and pass out, the ref would have just stopped it because we were out of bounds.
Wow.
And I actually tore the muscle in my palm because I was yanking it. If you look at the final, both my thumbs are taped and not just the one.
Yeah.
Because I went back there and I went, my fucking hand is killing me. And then it started swelling up and turned a little black and blue, and it was what it was.
Damn. Yeah, we have a great shot of that. Actually, there's a beautiful photo. Well, no, we're not going to be able to bring it up right now. But there is a beautiful photo of you, and it looks like you're
ripping it on. Yeah,
with that collar. To be honest,
I honestly felt like every second that went by, I was losing from that position.
And then your next match was another example of groundwork. You went on to win by pin. Is that correct?
No, I lost the final.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was
Thank
the
you
match
for that one.
before. I'm sorry. Yeah, once again, I'm just bringing them all out today. But it was the match before that you'd won by
People
pin,
always
right?
remember the time you lose.
Stands out. But that was great because the 2016 Olympics, your wins on the mat right there. That even though you're a Jiu-Jitsu black belt, we've talked about this before. That was not Jiu-Jitsu. That was pure Judo ground techniques, right?
I learned those techniques when I was a 10-year-old boy. It's always the basics. For all you purple belts out there trying to learn on YouTube.
Guilty.
And man, the post-Olympics thing then. So 2016, you come back home.
You know what's funny is when you've like strived for that like thing, that like greatness. When I was a kid, I remember going to one of Jimmy's camps that he was running, and he was wearing his Athens gi, right? And we talk about this, and I hear amateurs talk about this all the time. We looked at Jimmy wearing his gi, and we were laying in our beds that night in the dorm, and we were like, how does he wear that? If I ever made an Olympic team, that gi would be framed on a wall because it's something that's like prestigious, precious that you would like go through. But when you've done it and you've lived it and you actually have expected it and it's not a gift and you've earned it, you don't have that anymore. Like my Olympic gis are like, all 3 of them are folded in a closet, and I almost threw them away one time. Yeah, I've left my Olympic medal at schools and like driven away because I just like, okay.
Well, what I was going to ask was after that incredible emotional roller coaster of the journey, getting there and then getting that silver medal, coming home from Rio, I don't know, I get the impression it's almost like a soldier coming back from the war. It's almost like that return into civilian life. It's like, did you go through like a tough transition coming back? Because you weren't coming straight back into a prep for another Olympic cycle, right?
I was.
You were?
I had still had a fight coming up because I was still under contract for the pro league in Europe with Avensburg. I was expected to fight 90 kilos at the European Championship. So I didn't have to make weight, but I had to stay in shape. So I took 5 weeks to go on vacation. I came back, I trained, I went to Japan for, I think, 2 weeks. And then went on to Europe to fight the European Championships with a team. And then from there, I stopped training.
Will, are there any burning questions from Facebook or from the community or anything like that?
But the other thing
that
too
anybody's
is
learned?
like, when you've made it, and like I had that weight lifted off my shoulders that kept that drive going to reach that pinnacle, I couldn't do it again. I just don't have that drive, and because I've done it and I know that drive and what it takes to achieve that greatness, that's the reason why I don't do MMA. Like, unless the money is there to where like I could retire, like I have no desire to like win a UFC title. Could I? Would it be fun? Yeah, but I don't have that edge, that drive, that competitive and desire to have it. So doing it would just be a monetary value, and they don't pay for that.
Yeah, because another thing is that, you know, you're not a kid anymore, right? You know, 30 years of age coming back from Rio Olympics. I imagine judo years are a little bit like dog years because there's a lot of miles on the clock, right?
But even for jiu-jitsu, like, I have no desire to be a BJJ world champion. Like, I see no value in it. Like, it doesn't, like, fill my soul like winning an Olympic medal did. It doesn't make me feel like I'm a better person because I won a BJJ world title.
I mean, an Olympic medal is literally priceless, right?
Yeah, and when I achieved it, like, I understand what it takes and the necessary drive and passion that you have to wake up at 6 a.m., to do the trainings when your shoulder hurts, when your ribs are broken, to go to therapy, to do all that. So, like, I couldn't do myself justice to, like, make those runs, to make those gains it doesn't make sense.
But after the games, you flirted with a couple of ideas. You know, you put some signals out there that you were potentially interested in MMA. You even went down to the WWE training facility and did some workouts there.
Yeah, and the only reason why I didn't do that is because I just didn't believe in their model. It just wasn't for me. Like, it had nothing to do with, they actually didn't do enough for their athletes to help them gear up and train, because I went down there with the mentality of, okay, let's do this 14 hours a day and teach me. Well, I can't be here for you 14 hours a day. Well, if you can't be here and you're the guy that decides how much money I make, I don't want to be here. if you're telling me I have to do it on my own, but it's your decision, like, help me. I'll do it 14, 20 hours a day. Let's figure it out.
I hear that. What about, let's go through some of these reader questions. You got something there, Will, you want to shout out?
Well, the number one thing is people ask, do you do seminars?
Yes.
You
A
do?
lot of people have
Okay.
been asking about those, yeah.
What's the best way to get in touch with you to set one of those up?
Any social media account or just email Travis at Fuji Sports.
Perfect.
And you have a DVD, right?
I have a few.
You have
Yeah.
a few DVDs.
Got
Well,
the Fuji Fit program as well, I believe, is that correct?
Yep.
Something you've been working on quite a lot.
Yep. That's basically just a platform for grapplers to become better grapplers. I can't tell you how often I see people on like Instagram or Facebook lifting weights, and I'm like, you're just being a meathead guy. Like, that's not how you get, like, do you have any idea what you need to do to be a better grappler or like accomplish it?
Have you been watching Keenan Cornelius's Instagram by any chance?
No.
I'm joking, Keenan, but
But it's for all of them. Like, I see like gi grip pull-ups or like guys with grip trainers carrying kettlebells, and I'm like, guys, like, do jiu-jitsu if you want to work on your grip strength. If you can't develop your grip strength in 2 hours of a jiu-jitsu practice, just quit. Just quit.
I got to read a question here actually. Is there anybody you see in jiu-jitsu and you admire them as an athlete for their workout, for their accomplishments? Is there somebody you look at and you think, yeah, that guy, he's got it going on?
Just Gordon right now, because he's the only guy I see that like treats the sport like a professional, that has been intelligent enough to be in a room with the guy that's a coach, that is a professional coach. Like, John's sole purpose right now is to wake up every morning, dissect jiu-jitsu, dissect the athletes he has to fight, and give Gordon the best opportunity to win. And John has a room full of guys that believe in the program, believe and understand what it is they're doing, and they're willing to do the work. Like,
No.
it just is what it is. Like, I don't see that from many other places. I see a lot of other places. Who was it that was on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about why jiu-jitsu has it all backwards?
And
Askren.
Askren, yeah.
Askren.
That's how I see most jiu-jitsu guys training. But when you go to John's class and he works with those guys, like, it's very specific to what they need to be better. It's not this broad overview picture of, okay, guys, here's what we're doing today in class.
You think Ben needs to go take a class with John?
I think Ben has that just from doing NCAAs. Like, that's just his mentality and training, and that's why he could be the Bellator champion or whatever it was he fought.
How about the 10th Planet? Like, are you familiar with their system? Because they have a very, very specific system of doing things. And 10th Planet, Eddie Bravo is like kind of the John Danaher of 10th Planet.
Very methodical.
Yeah, and he kind of has a similar. Are you familiar at all with the 10th Planet system? Or
I'm
anything?
not.
Yeah.
But I watch their athletes in preparation and how they compete, and I don't see the same work ethic going in. Like, I don't know, what's that guy's name fighting Nicky Ryan coming up?
Gio
Gio.
Martinez.
Like, I don't see Gio training at 6 a.m. and then 12 p.m. and then 6 p.m. and then weightlifting at 10 p.m. Like, I just don't see, like, I can't envision him doing that, but I also don't know him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the other reason why I can't really answer that, because I'm not really a part of those camps.
Right.
So I don't know. But that's just my take as far as, like, I see a guy compete a year ago, and then I see him compete a year later, and I go, you're doing the same thing you did a year ago, and you're expecting a different result.
I know you don't follow it as closely, but are there any jiu-jitsu athletes or competitors that you look at and you're impressed with their stand-up abilities for that sport? Not like in a classical judo sense, but you think, well, that guy, you know, he does what he needs to do well. He can throw, he can take them down.
Yuri would probably be like the best bet. Hidalgo would be another one. Andre. Those would probably be my top choices as far as, like, they do a very good job of understanding the goal. Like, let's get this guy to the ground in a position that I'm going to be able to control my opponent when he hits the ground. Not so much we're just going to run as quick as we can, or we're going to try high school wrestling tactics to take him down. Those are probably my three.
Another question we got was, what are some of the most effective takedowns for jiu-jitsu?
Guard pulling into sweeping. In all seriousness, like,
Yeah.
if you can pull guard, kick a guy in the nuts, and he falls down, that's 2 points.
Do you prefer the open guard, kind of foot in the hip, Tomonagi style, sit to guard, Are you of John's opinion that flying guard pull, jumping guard pull in is garbage? How do you feel?
Yeah, I think jumping guards should be abolished, or they should allow slamming. One or the other. I 100% disagree with the idea that I can jump on you with full force at your knees and break your leg and win a match. And there's nothing you can do to stop me.
What about training with Dave? Dave's got a really interesting system of attacks, flying attacks, right? He goes straight into flying submissions, arm bars, triangles. He's got a whole system of sweeps from the landing position. What do you think about those?
There's a difference between a flying attack and jumping guard. Jumping guard serves no purpose. Other than the fact that I'm saying, I'm going to jump on you. You're only allowed to hold me up while I'm allowed to submit you.
Because flying attacks,
and you have to catch me.
Flying attacks exist in judo too. You see some flying arm bars once in a while, right?
Yeah. It was one of the mistakes I did in my final match in Rio was I didn't pull the trigger and I didn't do it in the finals because it was the Olympic final.
You were thinking, I shouldn't throw a flying arm bar.
I had it in the first exchange and I just didn't pull the trigger.
Wow.
It's one of my regrets. And I had done it once in training camp against one of my partners who is a John Danaher black belt that does judo, who came down to help, us get ready.
Is that one of the St. Ledger brothers by any chance? You're right.
And I had done it to him, and it caught him so off guard that it actually worked. So I had it in my back pocket to do, and when it came time to do it, it happened so quick in the match, I hesitated and I just let it bypass.
Wow. Another question for you from one of the readers. Now, this is probably a little bit humorous, witty question. However, I'm genuinely interested to know, do you berimbolo?
Yes.
There we have it. You do? You practice those techniques?
But I never use it to go to the back.
You use it to come up on top?
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty good to come up straight into a passing position, right?
Every time I see somebody try to fight for the back, I think they're idiots.
But that said, I remember you've got that amazing clip of you and Paulo Miao when you go for that amazing spinning back take from the double under.
But that wasn't
pass.
a berimbolo.
It wasn't a berimbolo, but it just reminded me of that clip. I was there at that tournament.
You know how that came to be?
How?
I watched a match with Keenan and him fighting, and they got double DQ'd.
That's
and
right.
One of my black belts came up, and he goes, "Hey, did you see that match?" And I go, "Yeah, why is Keenan such an idiot? Like, why doesn't he just take his back? Like, the guy plays such a game that is so geared to a berimbolo where he refuses to come on top for points. Like, he almost has to go to the back. That's how easy it is to stop, because he's never going to come up. Like, why doesn't he just, every time he puts his legs there, why doesn't he just take the back?"
Yeah.
And then I showed him that move, and he's like, "You really think that would work?" And I go, "Watch it, Copo Podio, and I'm going to do it."
Man, you came so close. So close. I remember that moment. You guys are spinning.
If you
and
watch
you come up at the end and you just shout out. It's like, ah!
Because I made the mistake and I was doing judo and I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I had made the transition because the speed had picked up. If you watch it slowly, like right when I go to take his back, you see my hands go for the collar because I was in judo mode. We were moving quickly and I was just going to choke him. I should have just set the seatbelt and held him.
Yeah,
but I
might
didn't.
just scoot out right
and then
there
he
the last
scooted out and I
second.
missed the grip and I lost the whole position and then frustration kicked in.
That was a crazy tournament. I mean,
All because I didn't set a seatbelt and follow John's rule of, understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And my goal for doing the whole move was to take his back, not get the choke. And then I skipped the step of taking the back to get the choke.
I remember you took Felipe Pena for a ride in that tournament.
A couple
as well,
times,
right?
I think.
Yeah. That was just frustration because I got cheated.
Not for the first time.
No, but that happened because when I threw him, I was passing his guard while he was clearly dazed at that situation. And then we weren't out of bounds by any means. And the ref stopped it, allowed him to get up, tie his belt, fix his gi, and then reset with grips he didn't have. Or better grips that we see all the time and it's expected.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't have the throw just happening, me running through his guard with clear head and him trying to figure out which way's up and which way's down. I lost that in my pass, which when he resets 2 minutes later, I've kind of lost what I worked to gain, all because the ref stopped it for whatever reason, which you see in jiu-jitsu all the time. Like, guys aren't out of bounds, but they just what are we stopping it for?
It's really inconsistent.
Yeah, like what's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah,
If there's,
we
don't have an out of
say the same
bounds.
thing. Every tournament we go to, it's like, man, please don't restart it right now, please, because the guys are going, and then they can be like 5 feet away, one guy will restart it there, another ref will let them roll out. It's really inconsistent.
Yeah, so that, and then I got frustrated, so when he stood up again, I just did it again. But then I wasn't in the same knee cut kind of position, so yeah.
Anybody else?
One of the questions we had was, I don't know if you guys have this in judo, but like if you're in the same tournament, or if you're in a tournament with another guy on your team and you're on opposite sides of the bracket, right? If you guys both get to the top of the bracket, do you close out? Do you have close
Of course not.
out? You guys fight?
That's the dumbest thing in the world.
Okay.
Are you kidding me?
Seriously, I
Nice.
hat off to you, sir. I'm so glad to hear that, right? Like, closeouts, what the hell?
Language. But what the fuck's wrong with you people? Like, why go? You expect me to train for years to make a world final to not fight it? Like, what are you doing?
Amen. I agree.
Yeah, you don't
We're all
hear
in
anybody
agreement.
argue
Seriously?
against that at this table.
Like, tell me your logic there. Like, I remember Keenan had to close out with, was it
I think it was
Campos?
Yeah, Campos, yeah.
At like a Pan Am's. Like, what are you doing?
He
You've
was
worked
pissed about that.
so hard. So hard. Why are you a part of an organization that says you cannot win? Ever. Ever. As long as there's somebody a part of your organization that's a higher rank than you. And you guys want Jiu-Jitsu to be an Olympic sport? Do you know how pissed the Olympics would be paying for all those television rights for you two to make the finals to go have a beer later?
Yeah,
What's wrong with you guys?
100% agree.
I just want to clip that and put that up. Anyone defends closeouts, it's like, I'm going to drop this right here.
That'll be my stock reply.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Man, I think
They
just
should
to-
all be fined.
That I 100% agree. I think put them on the same side of the bracket for a start. Don't let them even meet in the final. If they have to let one
No,
pass, let them-
don't let two people from the same association enter a bracket.
Yeah, they have loopholes to get
Team
around
trials.
that,
Let
right?
'em-
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. They should have internal trials for who represents that team at that level. But let's wrap up with a series of quick rapid fire questions. This is something that we do on a couple of interviews and stuff. So, if not judo, which athletic career would you have chosen?
Probably wrestling.
Favorite city that you've ever visited?
I don't really do the sightseeing thing. Like, I kind of go from hotel room to gym to hotel room, and I actually like just being in my hotel room and working. If I'm not working, then I feel like I'm wasting my time and my life away.
So, favorite place in the world that you've maybe trained judo?
Ravensburg. probably.
Ravensburg, Germany.
Yeah, because it was the one place where we could get like the professionals together and like just enjoy like working with each other in like a fun environment, not so much a hey, we're gonna do 5-minute rounds today and we're gonna kick the crap out of each other.
You've traveled a lot, all right? However, any countries that you haven't been to that you would like to visit?
No.
Tick them all off the list. Music, do you listen to any pre-fight rituals or anything before a big tournament?
I do, but top secret.
Oh, really?
I
Is it
have
embarrassing?
Nope. I have a playlist that is geared to me, and I keep it that way to me because people try to replicate the things of people they look up to. But my music is geared to release dopamine into my mind, to put me into a happy place that jogs memories, that trigger an emotion that help me fight. So I
Wow.
have a specific
Very
playlist
personal.
that is geared to me, that something in my life happened while these types of songs were going through my life that puts me in a mindset that's ready to do what I'm going to do.
Most memorable competition moment, good or bad? Which sticks out the most?
The most memorable, getting screwed in the semis of London. That's going to haunt me forever.
Favorite food to eat after a tournament? Preferably a tournament that you've had a good performance at. But something you like to
Italian.
eat? Italian food? Pasta, pizza?
It varies
it.
from where I can get it, yeah, but where I can get it. Cheesy, pasta, pizza, soda, yeah, mozzarella sticks. The cheesy Italian foods.
I hear
All
that.
of them.
All of them. If I could lay them all out on a table and just take a scoop of all of them, all of them.
Yeah.
Looking just any grappler, past or present, that you wished you could have had that experience to go up against them, or maybe a legendary figure from the grappling arts that you would like to go one-on-one with, get a feel for that? Anybody?
Dan Gable.
Like to do some rounds with him?
I hear the stories and I hear the mentalities and I hear the stories that like people portray, and I know wrestling's different and they believe it, but like I would love to experience that like ability for somebody to like break an Olympic level wrestler like he was able to do. Just to understand that mentality and that pressure, because you see it in his coaching, but if his coaching is anything like my coaching, my athletic career was way more violent than my coaching. So I would like to see an experience, even if I just sat in the room, just to watch it happen.
Toughest guy that you ever faced in competition?
Bischoff.
What was it that put him apart from the others?
It's almost a mirror matchup between me and him.
Like fighting your shadow?
Yeah. So it was literally like a battle of wills of who's going to break who. Like if you watch our match, the same hand comes in on opposite sides together, one after the other. It's the same throws, same gripping exchanges, same newaza exchanges over and over and over again. And it wasn't until somebody made a mistake.
Probably same answer, but which rematch would you like more than any other? Any unfinished business?
There was a guy by the name of Ewan Burton from Great Britain, actually, that was like 6'5", and he had like the most awkward build, and I've never beaten him in my career. Ever. He's always beaten me. And there was a time where we had the Worlds, and there was like 109 different people at the Worlds, and I fought all the way to the 4th round, and I lost to him, which was the round before the quarters to start fighting for medals. So I didn't make it into the medal performances because I ended up losing to him.
Wow.
That one match, because had it been anybody else, I was actually like beating everybody fairly easy up until I ran into that guy that I've never beaten.
Yeah,
out of 109 people.
Cool. That's it for my rapid fire questions, guys.
That
Anything
happened
you'd like
again.
to-
Yeah, really quick.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
fought the Worlds one time. I went into it. They seed top 8.
Uh-huh.
I went into it seeded 9 and drew 8 out of 100 people.
Just so happens.
Yeah. Terrible luck at the Worlds for me.
You almost think they have it out for you, Travis.
A little bit.
Guys, anything we'd like to ask before we wrap this up?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming, Travis.
Yeah.
Really
That was
appreciate
awesome.
it, man.
Yeah,
It's
this
awesome.
opportunity to go inside the mind there for a couple of hours and priceless. Really
Yeah,
is.
happy to do it.
Thanks very much. So, guys, head back to FloGrappling.com for the full archive of this interview, and we'll be chopping up different parts of it. There's a lot to digest, some really good stuff. Just once again, Travis, thanks very much for coming in, and we'll see you guys next time.